Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have Irene Van Winkle. Irene, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I'm excited and honored after having heard so much about you to be on here. And so I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Could you tell us your current role?
Current, is that a play word?
Pun.
Yes, I'm a writer and a journalist, photographer, and writer for West Kerr Current newspaper in Ingram. And been there since 19, no, not quite that long, 2005.
How long have you been in Kerrville?
Well, on and off, I'll tell you the first time I stepped into Kerr County was in 1973.
What brought you to Kerr County in 1973?
My husband's family lived here in Center Point, outside Center Point, and they had just retired from the military. His dad, after career, 30 years and just a fabulous career, they decided to come to the hill country. One thing is the VA was here, and that made a big difference. But really, just he's a country boy. Grew up in near Lake Whitney, and so this area really appealed to him. And they were going to retire, and then they were going to do all kinds of things. So we came here because when we got married, we thought, oh, let's come here. You know how great. And my husband was in the Coast Guard at the time. So anyway, it's a long story, but
When did you and your husband permanently locate or relocate to Kerr County?
the longest stretch has been since 1990. So it's already been quite a few years.
So, what got you into journalism?
Well, my first experience in any kind of media was after we got married. I got a job for about a year with Peterson Publishing in New York City. They published magazines like Car and Driver, Skin Diver, big ones. And one of them was Air Progress, which was for people who built home, small planes. Like Jim Beatty was a big guy there, and they even had connections here to Mooney. So anyway, I worked there for a year, had a baby, and then we moved. My husband, had to go to college. He went back to college on a GI Bill. And so then after that, we kept coming back here to see the parents and eventually decided after running around like gypsies, we would settle here. I said, look, we can't keep coming back. You just have to stay. And we did.
What type of jobs did you have in after you moved permanently to Kerr County before you got to the Current?
Okay. Several. I worked actually at the Daily Times for about a couple of years when the old Bill, what was his publisher name? Dozier, Bill Dozier was still here. And I worked in composing and then left there and went to the TV station here with Mary Silver and I'm losing my mind. Rick Phipps, who sadly just passed away.
Right.
Great people. And eventually made my way over to the Mountain Sun, which by then was nearing 125 years of continual publication as the oldest newspaper in the county. Anyway, lots of things happened. Eventually, I came. My mother was sick, and I had to leave and then come back to got a job at the Current from a referral from a friend. And I just walked in, and they said, "When can you start?" Well, that was it.
So tell us about your observations of the print media scene in Kerr County.
Well, actually, I'm very surprised as to how lively it is. I mean, considering this county has like a little over 50,000, right? Population of 3 newspapers, 2 weeklies, and a daily are just, I think it's pretty extraordinary, actually. Quite a few radio stations and things like that. So we have a pretty good media presence here.
So what are those 3 newspapers?
Well, the Current, the Times, and the Journal.
And how do you see the role of the Current?
Well, one of our biggest pluses is because our focus, although not entirely, because we do cover a lot of other areas, but main purpose is West Kerr County, which has been in the news more than ever before with all this tragedy that's happened. Ingram, Hunt, the Divide, and points over, even almost as far as Harper, like to the line, Cafe at the Ridge. But we do go, and I've done a lot of stories about histories, and those stories have taken me to other counties even because of the connections that people in those stories have to Kerr County. And so when you say someone's from a family that came here and they live in Bandera, yeah, but their cousin moved to Hunt, or they work for the people, ranchers, things like that. A lot of very tight connections here going back 100 and 200, 300 years.
Prior to moving to Kerrville in 2021, I lived in Houston for 40 years. And so I've been really interested in the local print media scene for a couple of different reasons. One is, as you mentioned, the vibrancy, 3 papers, but also the difference in the role, or at least it perceived to me to be the difference in the role of a paper or papers in a big city like Houston as opposed to a smaller community like Kerr County or Kerrville. What do you see the role of a weekly in a rural county?
Well, one of the advantages, I guess, is well, first of all, we have 2 weeklies which come out once a week. Ours comes out Thursdays, and people get it in the mail. They come out on newsstands on Wednesdays, and the Journal and our paper come out about the same time. The Daily Times, well, it's kind of become less of a daily. It's more like 3 days a week. So they do publish more frequently, obviously, and they can catch up. But the weekly has more time, I think, to gather information. Maybe sometimes we miss the deadline, and that's bad because if news happens on Thursday and we come out on Wednesday, if we miss that week, we have to catch up later. But there are times we get a little fortunate and it comes in right at the time, and it's like hot right there. But every paper has their own role, their own philosophy, their own way of doing things, and even the size of the staff. I'm only the only one. Well, I'm the main reporter. We have Carrie Short. We have new people who've started contributing, like Bridget Sim, who's taken over the sports desk. She's doing a fabulous job. Then we have John Dunn, who started to contribute. We get a lot of contributions from fabulous photographers like Tony Gallucci, who is an icon around here, and we get a lot of his stuff. I'm not sure when you say role, what are you
Well, how
trying
about
to ask
then,
me?
I'm trying to figure out where the current kind of fits in your opinion, and maybe the question should be, what's the character of the current, or what makes the current different than the other 2 publications?
Yeah, definitely different. I'm not sure. I guess it has a lot to do with the editor. A lot of the time, it has to do with how much space we have for whatever we can get, and that's all, of course, driven too by advertising, as everybody knows. So, but I'm very proud of the fact that we have won a good number of awards for our writing, for contribution to the community. Our people are very loyal. I'll say that one thing. If they live anywhere west of Walmart, they like our paper a lot. Some people on other parts of town don't know us as well, but once they see what we've done and some of the things we have been doing, all of a sudden they'll say, "Oh, my kid played in that game," and even though they were from Tybee or somewhere, and they'll go, "Oh, do you follow that?" And so then they'll just kind of get hooked up. And I think it has a lot to do with the quality of the reporting we do and the stories we cover, which not everyone else covers as many or in the same way.
One of my observations about the difference in the Houston Chronicle, which is the sole newspaper or the largest newspaper left in Houston, and a smaller rural focused, is in many ways I see the Current, the Journal, or the Times, or maybe all 3, as holding the community together in a way that the Houston Chronicle can't or doesn't.
Right.
Would that be fair?
I would say that's what I mean. Our readers are so tight with us. They really enjoy it. Every day somebody comes in, "Oh, got to renew. I forgot to renew." Or, we keep reading the paper, and then sometimes they'll pass it over to a neighbor, which kind of says, "Okay, why don't you get your neighbor to get one too?" But they do really enjoy the flavor, and I love writing. I didn't get a journalism degree per se, but I think the nuns that taught me well. And it's just a really fun thing. We feel like they're family, really.
You mentioned the sports desk, and I grew up in Texas, so I understand the importance of Friday night in Texas. It doesn't matter what the size of your high school is. You could be the biggest now 6A school down to a school that plays 7-man football and everything in between. Why is it that the sports desk in these small towns is still so vibrant and still so well loved?
I think it's the fact that the kids are playing. and everyone wants to come out and see their child or their neighbor's child or whoever, even if you're the grandparent or whatever. We want our kids to succeed. And whereas sometimes academics are, great, but sports is an area where I think that some kids might not have shined in other areas. That's what they shine in, like football or baseball. And the coaches are so invested in these kids. The athletic directors, they are just one on one. I mean, you have Chris, uh, who's been over there in golf and tennis and all this. He's been there for 20 something years, Morales. And they love him. I mean, they wouldn't, he'd have to like run away somewhere for them to kick him out because he's just so devoted. And there's turnover in some areas, but I know the football coach and, these others are just, they treat those kids like their kids. And I think they appreciate that. I don't really see a lot of grumbling behind the scenes, really, when it comes to sports there. Uh, and so I'm talking about Ingram Tom Moore, obviously.
Sure.
But Tyvee's the same way. I mean, people have been going to Tyvee since 1905 or whatever. The school's been around forever. And so that's another part. And Hunt feeds into Ingram. But it used to be where people thought of Ingram schools as being kind of second rate. The school came in 1980, and from then on, it's been growing. But they were always like people complaining. I don't know if it was a matter of pride or economics or something that kept that school always kind of, well, they're not really as great as we are. I'm finding now it's almost not that there's anything wrong with Tyvee at all, but there are people now more going to Ingram from Kerrville than there were the other way around decades ago. And that just speaks to the fact that people really are seeing those West Kerr schools as really great schools and programs that they started like getting a college degree. You can get a 2-year associate's degree before you get out of high school. I mean, that's kind of revolutionary to me.
I interviewed Bobby Templeton, former head of Ingram Independent School District, several times. And I once asked him, what was the biggest surprise for you, having worked at KISD and in Tyvee for many years? And he said it was the income disparity of West Kerr County. Here, as he put it, there were some people whose gates on their driveway cost more than his house. And then what he learned during COVID was there were places that, not that they didn't have electricity, but they didn't have internet. Right. And so teaching during COVID online became particularly challenging. And so he really worked to try to bridge that gap in the Ingram Independent School District. And you mentioned one of his innovations, which was to develop a curriculum which would give every student, a 2-year college degree, associate arts degree, that they could then take into the workplace, or if they wanted to go to a 4-year college, they've got 2 years down. And so, as with you, that really struck me as incredibly innovative. And it came from, he told me, just a bunch of guys at the Hunt store saying, what can we do?
There's that bunch by the fireplace that usually were out on the porch that would sit and talk and all that. And that's another very sad story, but we're waiting to hope that the Hunt store will make a comeback. We don't know yet what's going to happen. But, the post office is coming back. They've now made plans where to build and do all that, which is great because the little town, they still sit over on the other side where the preservation park is. And there's a whole little bunch, same guys, Joe Voorhees and all those other friends, sit around and just, chatter all day. But boy, you can sit there and learn some stuff. But they have to kind of accept you in. You can't just walk over. They got to know you.
Well, you've been here 20 years. Are you beginning to get accepted, or you can see that it's possible?
I'm sorry. I'm not what they usually call a DN Yankee anymore. I'm actually part of it. Our oldest son, Damien, was born in New York, but the younger one was born in Kerrville. So I got a little of both. And I wasn't born here. My husband was born in Texas. So again, we're a blended family.
A blended family. I'm going to remember that one. I'd like to turn now to July 4th. And I'm particularly interested in what the Current saw as its role. Obviously, you had to interview people who had huge tragedies, but it's more than a story of just tragedy. There's resilience, there's hope, there's perhaps coming out of it. But I really wanted to was really impressed with. It was the first time in my life I'd seen the national press and the local press and how they have completely different focuses.
Yeah.
And when the national press left, the local press was still here.
Yep.
And so you were still doing your job. Could you speak to that?
Well, one of the things that I found a little challenge, maybe it's because I'm just not clever enough, um, they were able to sneak into Ingram and Hunt at the day of the flood or right after that. National media were in those areas at the river where things were still flooding, where many of us were not allowed. They wouldn't let me in. I mean, I was like, "Hey, I'm from here." Nope, that's it. Arms straight out. So I had to go, get special or find out when the community was opening up. The first day they had an open day for everyone was at the pavilion about I think a week or two after, and they all got together and people just had, you know, barbecue and got together, hug each other. People who hadn't seen each other since the flood, people who lost people. Um, as far as a role, I mean, I was just running around trying to get as much as I could get to help the people who didn't know what happened or not as well. I was trying to do stories of how do you survive, how do you not survive, who died, and that was the hardest part is finding out those that didn't make it. And when you have a neighbor who saw his neighbor trying to get out of their house and then get pushed back by the water and drown right in front of them practically, and then they were able to get out, but their houses were gone. Everything they owned. I had these two women who were down there by the Lazy Creek Loop, and their houses were both washed down, probably 500 yards away, and they had nothing. I had a picture of them standing in the backyard, picking with a little pail, picking through little bits and pieces of anything they could find that was still even recognizable or salvageable. Something that would just pick up a little piece of something and look at it and just start crying.
We all know the tragedy of Camp Mystic, but I wanted to ask you about Hunt and what you saw the flood did to Hunt, because I think other than the Hunt store, maybe most of us haven't focused on what did this do
Mhm.
to and mean for the town or the city of Hunt.
Well, it certainly was a test. um, the post office, there wasn't a brick left, not a post left on that slab where it had been. It was weird because the water coming down the river would have hit the post office first
Right.
and then the Hunt store. And so the post office was completely obliterated. The Hunt store still had the old fireplace. People were shocked that the fireplace stood because that was like the place where everybody sat. The front gate was still there, the door, but far little less was really left of that. And everybody would just kind of walk around in some kind of shock. Then they would put up wagons and food trucks. Samaritan's Purse came, Mercy Chefs came, and they actually set up over by City West Church, but they were always going back and forth. The amount of people who showed up to help was really like 10 times more than the population of the area. But then you had those trucks coming and coming and coming, this continual buzz and hum and roar of these trucks carrying away debris and trees. And there's a whole story about all that. Did they take? Were they supposed to take some of the things they took or not take? Somebody had to invite them to come onto the property to say, okay, now you can take this away. But some people just get rid of it, or others wanted to hang on to what they had. It's a very mixed bag. There's no one thing. It's. I found there was many people who were grateful for things that happened. Others who said we didn't get enough from anybody. We didn't. Where do we go? And they had these. Well, the whole thing about the people coming from Austin and grilling, and I would say, to me, somewhat overly zealous. Uh, you know, asking of the officials before they really had a chance to find out what really happened and how things went minute by minute. And you got different stories from some of those officials. Not all of them told the exact same thing. They told it from their own perspective, and none of them were as wrong or right as anybody else. But one thing we did learn from that was that we need that flood warning system, some kind of flood warning system. Some people are actually trying to create their own. Others are just seeing what the government's going to do. I know the commissioners had a big long thing with Tom Moser, the guy, and when they said he was a rocket scientist, he was. You know who Tom Moser was.
Oh, yes.
So, to have a guy like that come in and try to, develop a plan with help, of course, but to put it all together, I mean, it's pretty brilliant. We're lucky to have a lot of these retirees. They talk about the old people, but those are the ones that actually have all the experience.
Right. How far did the water get past the Hunt store?
Out onto the shore? You mean out?
Out
Until
behind the Hunt store. How far
behind the
back?
Hunt store? I don't know. See, if you look at, there's like areas that have a hill, like Hunt store has Dutch Heinz Street,
Right.
which goes to the school. So that's a slope going up, and many of the places have kind of a slope. But and on the other side were almost like high areas. That thing was wonky. I mean, going through Camp Mystic, that was you go out there now and it's as peaceful and quiet as it can be. But you see that the terrain changes throughout the area.
Right.
And there were like dams like the Hunt the Guadalupe River by Hunt.
Yes.
That dam was completely gone. That was quite a solid looking little thing, but that water, they were saying it had the power of Niagara Falls in some cases.
Right.
The strength of it. Can you imagine? I've been to Niagara Falls. It's mammoth. And to think that kind of amount of water, it's amazing that anything stood. But because there were little caverns and sluices and places, I don't think the water spread out that far because there was a lot of hilly terrain there. But it was different in different places. You go past Hunt, you go down to Ingram. Oh my gosh, that whole area. And now they're still got barges out trying to find maybe 2 people if they still think they can. I don't know. That little girl, she's, 8 years old, tiny little thing. I don't know that. They said they're going to look until they can't, until they find something. Personally, I'm a little skeptical that they will. It's hard to be that definitive about something like that. Tragedies in Comfort when they had that his hill.
Right.
And there was a boy that was never found, just things like that. So to make those kind of promises, I think is just a bit of an overreach. And these officials sometimes come in and they make these grand gestures. And I think that it's a little too much, getting people's hopes up. And then they get angry when it doesn't happen. And then they send millions of dollars worth of resources to do those kind of things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Why don't you just drain the lake? They did that years before, and it didn't cost $100,000. Like they're saying it's going to be so expensive. I'm just pulling that number out of the air. But anyway,
what about the people that came down? Both the public service, swiftwater rescue folks, the fire department, particularly the Ingram Fire Department. How did you find them?
Well, I tried to actually stay out of their way. They were busy doing things. They were one of the first people who brought in Camp Mystic, the kids, whoever they could find from the camps, Baltimore, and they brought in by helicopter. And they just closed the place down. Do not come in. And for many weeks, I just didn't. I wanted to respect their work and stay out of their way. If I saw someone or whatever, then I speak to them. We got regular reports from Ray Lynch, who was a former captain. Diana was busy. Diana Backus, she was very busy doing her thing with all her people. They did a stellar job as far as I never heard anybody complain about the fire departments. If anything, they were outstanding folks who did a lot of heroic work.
There was a huge destruction right at the Ingram Dam. That entire little shopping center got wiped out.
I know.
All of the homes that were close to there took damage, and all the way down to Ingram schools.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to me to have as bad a damage as really any other maybe place along the river.
Right. And Mr. Edelstein, who owns it, Steve, I don't know if you know him, he went and he'd gone to that little conference they had about people wanting to offer help. Just different agencies came and set up but 90% of that was take a loan, get a loan. And they're saying, how can we pay you back when we're not making any money?
Right.
It's just kind of ironic. Yeah, well, we'll give you 8%. I don't care if it's 1%. You have to pay it back at all. We're not doing it. But some people, like Mr. Edelstein, took on whatever they could financially and got to work. And he I don't know how many of them are coming back. I know the hairdresser, she's well, AJ Nelson. She wants to come back. He's trying to get his store back. Um, so Domino's, I don't know. I still haven't heard. It's like a corporate decision, so I'm not sure if they're coming back or not. Some of the other places may or may not. But I think if he builds it back, people will come, whether they're the same people or a different crowd.
How about a little bit further down at the Ingram Loop?
There's was a lot of damage down there on the lower end because it's you have the part that's right where the river comes. There's three rivers come together up there: Indian Creek, Guadalupe River, and Johnson Creek.
Right.
That's quite a confluence of water. But that's all at the farther end. But like the lamps and shades, they moved over to where Southwestern Elegance was. Southwestern Elegance took their stuff and put it up in their big warehouse in the back. So there's like two coexisting together, which they had a recent little shopping event, and it was great. Everybody came, bought a lot of stuff. They're very people. Now, one guy who has done so much for the community, Darren Potter, he had the copper cactus, but he used to have, it was all just a lot of his own work. He does a lot of jewelry and things like that. But what he had done, and this was long before the flood, was say, "Oh, I'm going to make some B&B. I got room here." So he gets a boat that he got, I think, from someone who knew Larry Graham over at Camping Hunt, to go down to the coast and bring him a boat. And he painted it yellow and blue. You've probably seen it, in the back. So that's a little B&B, like a little very sort of maritime theme. Then he got a bus, and it was an old, I guess, a Greyhound or whatever. And he fixed it up like a rock and roll group, and all his records and things, and very cute. And then he fixed up some places inside his building. So he pretty much got rid of anything but just living spaces for people. And it's fun. It's great. He was lucky he didn't really get a lot of damage there. Neither did Perfect Surroundings, thank goodness. Further down, though, some of those buildings had already been a little bit in bad shape. Down the line, though, the RV park did get some damage there, but they're back. I mean, people are living there. Everything has been either gone or been cut back, but a lot of it is springing back to life. Now, Clint Orms had just decided he was going to move into Kerrville anyway, so that whole area wasn't affected in the sense. I don't think there was a lot of damage there, but there are other businesses around the corner that are the nail place, and there was a ice cream parlor. I'm not sure if that's still coming around. And then across from there is a bar, kind of a downtown bar, and then next to it is a bakery and then a wine bar.
Right.
And those two, the bakery and the wine bar, are sisters, and they've kind of been supporting each other. The other bar, they're kind of remodeling, and they're putting in new gravel and starting to make a venue out of it again, because people were coming, but not as much. I think they really wanted to boost that up. And then across the street, that Mad Hair Salon, they're still okay, as is the Hunt Salon. That was pretty much okay, I think. So it's very erratic on how damage was, but pretty much everybody. I don't know of that many people who just said, "I'm packing up and leaving and never coming back again." Most of them were wanting to make the best of a situation. The part of that was less helpful was that the funding didn't come through quite as much as they had been expecting or hoping. We'll see. I don't know. There are people. The other financial part of it is really a shame, is with what's happened with Mystic and those people who perished up there. And there's been a lot of lawsuits and talking. I can understand what they're saying. I don't know if I can agree with everything all parties are saying, but I do know one thing is that Mr. Eastland passed away. He drowned in that flood.
Right.
And from what I hear, he was trying to help kids get out.
Right.
He was not a young man,
No.
And he did what he could, and he paid a price. So did Jane Ragsdale from Heart of the Hills. So those are long-standing old camping families that have spent most of their lives dedicated to that industry. So, but that's for the laws and the courts to decide.
Right. Irene, I think we're probably at the end of this episode. Before we leave, could I ask if you could give our listeners information about the West Kerr Current, or if they wanted to connect with you, how would be the best way to do so?
Okay, well, we are located at right at the Y in Ingram. You face the light there and look to your left, and it's right next to the Gibbons's blacksmith shop. Anyway, so you can stop in, but we're not always there. So you take your chance. But if you see my little red Jeep, then I'm here. The phone number you can call 830 367 3501. You can email us at westkerrcurrent@gmail.com. Look us up online. We have a little bit of a page. It's not really great. Anyway, we don't rely that much on electronic sources. We like to have people come in and say hello, but you can get an electronic subscription. So if you want to get a full paper, you can also get this electronic one, or just get the electronic one. It just depends on who's comfortable doing what. But can I just do one more shout out?
You bet.
I'm going to get political. Do you mind?
Go ahead. Yes. And tell the listeners what you just held up and tell us why you're wearing it.
My family came from Ukraine, and as you all know about the war with Russia. So I do everything I can to support the Ukrainian cause. People may or may not like that, but I haven't had a lot of people argue with me over it. So I wear the bracelet. It's a red and blue. I mean, a blue and yellow. The blue is at the top, which is for the sky, and the yellow is for the wheat. And it's a beautiful country. I was there in 2016, in between all conflicts, and I got to see the country of my family, and it was just incredibly beautiful. The people are strong, and we've been fighting the Russians for over 1,000 years, believe it or not. Nobody knows that history that much, but they just can't keep their hands off it because they know what a wonderful place it is, and it's strategic. We're in Europe. He keeps saying no, but anyway, that's just my little piece. So thank you for letting me.
Well, thanks for reminding us about that. Thanks again, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
I do too, and appreciate you having me. This has been great, and it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it would be because I didn't know what you'd ask. But I brought all my papers, but that's okay. They can get them in the newsstands.
Great. Thank you again.
Take care.